Okay. So I'm just starting the recording. I'm just sharing my screen right now. Just let me know if you can view my screen. Are you able to view my screen right now? Or is
Yes,
it?
sir.
It's yeah, you are able to view. Thank you.
Yes, yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I'll just brief you about this capsule session first, because most of you have joined from the Telegram group. Okay. So the idea behind this training is to impart knowledge on the Java related skills. So I just came up with this thought of giving it a try on these capsule sessions. Basically, I am from the IT background. So I have 14 plus years of experience and I work for a reputed IT organization. I don't want to reveal the name of my organization at present. And my name is Sabari Balaji. Okay. Most of you might not be aware of me. I train people, and right now I'm working with a specific unit relevant to the Java stacks. So my grade is on Java Architect, and I've completed a lot of Java related certifications, and I'm also cloud certified on AWS on the architect level. Okay, solutions architect, and I'm focusing on completing my professional certification as well. So why should I come up with this kind of training? Is that I'm going to focus on any commercial training stuff like that? No, actually, I'm not planning to do any commercial trainings. So it's going to be fully free of cost. So the reason I'm giving it free of cost is because I'm more passionate towards technology, and I just wanted to share my knowledge, whatever I've acquired and I've experienced so far, to the people who are in need of that knowledge. So that's the idea behind this training session. And thank you so much for trusting me and joining this session, because most of you might not be aware of me. Because you are coming from the communication have been posted on the Telegram channel. So different Telegram groups I've posted, and you people have joined this session through that medium. So yes, of course, this is a capsule session. So capsule session meaning is it's going to target a niche topic, and we are going to discuss on that topic more detail. Okay, so it's not a series of training. So it's not that every week or every day we'll be having a training, because I'm engaged with full-time employment. So I'll be completely focused on that as my key area. So but this is something I do it under an hobby mode, so that I can reach out to the people and deliver my skills, whatever I have acquired so far. So this will happen on Saturdays. I might not give a guarantee that it can happen on every Saturday. Okay, because it depends on my commitment. I do have family, so I have family commitments, and I also work commitments. So whenever I'm free, sure, I'll just come up with these kind of sessions, more interesting sessions, more live demonstrations. Rather than discussing more of theory, we'll just step into the more practical understandings of it. So that's what my intention is. I'm not sure how many of them are coming from the background of Java and how many of them are into the development of Java track. There might be people who are in beginners as well, I guess, because it's mixed up of crowd. But whatever it is, if you attend these sessions, probably even if you're a beginner, you might get more knowledge of how the real-time application development actually happens in the IT organizations. So that's the idea behind this training. So I hope I've set the context clearly. If in case you have any questions on this, please do let me know. Today's topic is on Spring Boot. Okay, Spring Boot, an application that we will be developing on Spring Boot, and then we'll be pushing that application into the AWS EC2 instance, and then we'll be running that application on top of that, and we will use the AWS DNS to access that application. So this is the theme behind today's topic of discussions. So I'll just pause here. If in case you have any questions, please do let me know. So if you have any questions relevant to this training, please do let me know so that I can try to give more briefing about it. So the thing is, today we are going to use some of the tools. People who are new completely, this is Spring Boot is a Java related framework. Okay, so we are going to use the Spring Boot today to develop an application and push that application into the cloud premise. Hope my voice is audible. Am I loud and clear, or you're facing any challenge? Please do let me know.
Yeah, clear. Everything
Clear.
is
Yeah.
fine.
Thank you. Okay. So yeah. So hope you can see my screen right now. I've just shifted to Chrome. Okay. So what is that we are going to discuss today is on Spring Boot. So the tools that we will be using here is IDE, so a specific IDE, and that IDE is going to be of STS, which we call it as Spring Tool Suite. Okay, so that's the ID that I'm going to use to develop the application. And basically, Spring is a Java-based framework. Okay, Java-based framework, and this is widely used in the market today, right? So if you talk about a full stack developer, a Java full stack developer, it's mandate that the developer should possess the knowledge on the Spring framework. But we are not going to discuss the fundamentals of the Spring here. I'm going to directly take you to an a framework called Spring Boot. So Spring Boot technically falls under the Spring framework. Okay, and it is a separate umbrella of the under the Spring framework. So we'll be using this Spring Boot to quickly create a backend application, and we'll be able to see that that application runs on the local machine, and then we will also take it up to the cloud. Okay, so the IDE that I'm using right now is going to be Spring Tool Suite, which is an Eclipse based IDE. Okay, it's an Eclipse based IDE, and you can also download it and make use of it. If you're working with Eclipse, still you can go ahead and use it. But my advice is to go ahead and download the Spring Tool Suite so that it's more convenient for us to, for us to work on top of the Spring Boot. So Spring Tool Suite is available in the someone have requested. So if you people see any request, if you can able to provide the access, please do it. Otherwise, I'll just come and give it again. Okay, so I have my STS here. So I already have some set of codes done here, but let's do this from the beginning. So that we can quickly see how the steps are involved in order to create a Spring Boot application. So right now, this is a Spring Tool Suite IDE. You can see that the version that I'm using right now is the Spring Tool Suite 3, and I'll just try to. Okay. Since I'm sharing, I'm unable to show you that. So there is an application called Sports Store app, which is already created. Probably I can explain you this, but we'll try to create this from the first. So this is more of an Eclipse IDE. People who are beginners might also be aware of the IDE called Eclipse, right? It's going to be the same as Eclipse. There's no much difference. So you will be familiar with Eclipse so that you can quickly work with STS also because it is built on top of the Eclipse. So to create a Spring Boot application, it's not going to be the way how we create generic Spring web applications. We have a starter mode of creating a Spring Boot application. So here you can see that from the IDE, you can go to File and you can click on New, but I'm unable to show you that because I'm on the full screen mode and shareable mode. So I'm right clicking on the Project Explorer, go to Other, and you can look out for Spring Boot, Spring Starter Project. Okay, so this is going to help us in quickly creating a Spring Boot application. So right now we have a Sports Store app. So I'll just call it a Sports Store now. And this is going to be built on top of the Maven, as you can very well see that. Is my ID visible? Or because I'm switching between the screens, is that ID visible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Visible.
okay. Yeah, fine. Thanks. So, yeah, you just um, give an artifact ID, which is, as I said, it's a Maven. It's going to be built on top of the Maven, and I'm using the Java 11 version. And the packaging is going to be a jar package, and the language that we are using here is Java. So we can use multiple other languages in order to develop applications with Spring Boot. One is Kotlin, which is well famous for Android application development. Probably people who are working with Android might know about the Kotlin. And we have something called Groovy, which is a kind of a scripted language, but that is built on top of that is going to get executed on top of the JVM. All these three are JVM based languages, but traditionally we used to work with Java, right? So that's why I'm going for choosing the Java. And today we are going to see the Java code in order to build the web application. So let's switch this to com.sports.common is the package name. Okay, Java application. Whenever you create a Java application, we need to define the package. So I'm defining the package as the group as well, so that it's going to be the same in the package. So Maven group ID and the package, I'm giving it the same, and the artifact is the same name as the application name. This is your application name here, and select the Maven. If you want to work with different build tools like Gradle, you can go ahead and choose that, but default it to Maven. And the packaging, generally we call it as a WAR file, web archive file. Whenever we create a web application using Java, we build them into a WAR. But since it's a Spring Boot, we have an option of embedded Tomcat, okay, where a Tomcat instance runs inside an application itself. So application will control the server. Okay, so that's how the applications are built today, because we are Dockerizing the applications much faster with the help of embedded servers. But if in case you want to convert them to a traditional WAR where you want to deploy it in some external servers, like for example, a WebLogic or WebSphere, then ideally we have to go for the choice of WAR, because jar artifact will not fit into those servers like WebLogic or JBoss, any of the application servers. Anyways, I'm not going more deep into it. Let's keep it as it is, a self-executable web application, that is jar. Okay, and it's like a standalone web application. We can even call it that way, a standalone web application, and that's why the packaging is jar defaulted, and the version and the language. So providing all these steps, you can notice that there's a service URL. This will connect to the start.spring.io app, web app, and from there it will pull all these details actually. Okay, so you can either go to that site and create a project there and import the project into your IDE, or sitting from your IDE itself, you can create a Spring Boot project by connecting to that uh, to the application. Okay, so what I mean is, if I just take you to the browser, so when we say start.spring.io, it's a web dashboard where you'll be having an option to provide all the details. Okay, Maven project, the group ID, artifact ID, name of the project, package name, the archive is jar, the artifact is jar, and they are choosing 17, Java 17 as their application, and you can add your dependencies here. So if you want to add a specific web dependency, you can choose a web dependency and include the Spring Web and add, let's say you want to go for MongoDB, you can just choose Spring Data, embedded MongoDB database or Spring Data MongoDB templates, NoSQL MongoDB, which we can use. So you can keep adding all the dependencies, and what you have to do is just click on generate. And this will download a zip file. You can extract it and you can import that. This is a good old Java project only. Okay, you can quickly import it into your IDE. But I'm not doing this way. Rather, I'm getting into the IDE, and from there, you can see that this start.spring.io will pull all these informations what you're seeing on the web application right now down here. So it's more of interactive, right? So I mean, this gives more space for us to provide all the essential details sitting from the IDE itself. Okay. Okay, so fine. So now let's hit next. And the current Spring Boot version that we have is 2.7.0. And we can choose the specific requirement of libraries. So I need Spring Web Library, the dependencies. I need in-memory database, H2 database, and I'm going to make use of Spring Data JPA. And probably I can include MySQL driver as well. And I guess, yeah, that's it. So we don't need MySQL when we go for embedded database, but still I just wanted to differentiate on how we can use MySQL driver and H2 database. So these are all the dependencies that I wanted in my project. Okay. How do we add all these dependencies here on the web dashboard? Is by clicking on the dependencies, type in your dependency that you want to add, and that can get added. Like for example, if you want MySQL driver, then you can include that here, right? So later also you can add your dependencies. Okay, not necessary that at the time of creating the project you need to add it. Later as well, you will be having a provision to add your dependencies. So hit next, and this will download the zip file, extract it, and import it in your IDE. Everything is going to happen automatically in the IDE rather than we do it manually via this. Okay, there are two approaches that we can play around with Spring Boot. So we can just go ahead and finish. So now you can notice that it's building the project. Okay. Actually, there is a problem in auto acceptance in my Teams. So this is my personal account of Teams. I'm not taking this from my corporate Teams account. Okay, so that's where the challenge is. Okay, so now you have to notice that we have. Okay, let me stop sharing for a minute. Okay, and then I'll reshare the screen so that. Yeah. People can go on mute. If there is any queries, then probably we can address that. Otherwise, until then, please ensure you're on mute. Yes, everyone are on mute. Okay, thanks. Yeah. I hope now my screen is visible, right? Okay. So now
Yes, sir.
you can notice that we have this sports store project which got created, and you have to have a look at this place where it says boot. So what that boot refers to is it's nothing but referring to the Spring Boot application. Okay, you will have a flag which says that it's a Spring Boot application. So this is not a normal Spring Framework application. It's a Spring Boot application. It's pretty simple to go ahead and create our applications quickly. So let's expand this. And you can notice that there is a package that refers to the one which we gave, com.sports.common. It's a sports store application. And inside this application, a class, which is a default class, you can see that there is a main method, right? So this is where the entry point is. So every programming language has its own entry point, and we have the entry point of main. So what this main entry point is going to do for us, uh, this will be picked up by your standalone embedded Tomcat that we have in our uh, application. So we just used the embedded Tomcat server. We have a Tomcat server that is by default going to be activated, and this Tomcat server will look out from the executions of this main by calling this application class. Okay, it will set up all the required dependencies, injections will all be done automatically. So Spring Boot is going to make our life easier. Okay, rather than we go ahead and do manual workaround wherever the dependencies are required, the Spring Boot can automate for us. Okay, since this is a little bit of intermediate session, so I cannot go more basic on it, but probably I'll think of coming up with another session where we can talk or discuss more from the basics of Spring Boot also. So right now, just observe what is the steps that I'm trying to do. So right now we have the entry point method, and this is a web application. This is not going to be a standalone application, but the way we create an application looks like a standalone because we have a main method. Traditionally, if we go for a web application, we will not see the main method existence, right? So like, for example, servlets, you send a request, you get a response. So that's differently a separate functionality. But wherein here we are bringing in main because that's the power of Spring Boot, because it gives the executional environment, that is your server, embedded into the application itself. So let's go ahead and keep doing further steps. So from here, I can just think of uh, creating more packages. So what are the packages? The first thing is we need controller, and then we need, see, I'm creating the same way how we used to create it in a real-time project. Okay, this is how we have to be very keen on all these steps. Okay, people who are newbies and who are beginners, see that the way how I'm working on it. Okay, this is how in the real time we work in the environments. So we work with more standard way. Okay, just like that, don't go and give some sample package name. Okay, demo package name, don't use that. You can see the way how I'm using it. Com refers to a particular commercial applications. We have something, or we refers to the component, or we can go and use org.sports, where it refers to a specific organization. Okay, so com.sports.common dot. Now we can go for giving a service package. So I'm creating all the packages right away, and
So,
repository. Yep.
is there any way to zoom in the idea? Like letters are very small to see.
Really?
Yeah, means here the folders and this structure. ID
Uh,
content is clear, but folder
okay.
structure and everything.
I guess this project explorer content that we cannot expand it. Problem is here we will not have the option to expand it. Um, I'll just explain it. Okay, what is there in here? I'll just explain it. Again, common dot. I'm creating a sequence of repositories. Okay, so model, and then creating a package. So controller, model, repository, servers, and DAO. Okay, so these many packages I've created underneath my application. So which is my root package? So you can see the root package is spelled as com.sports dot common. So this becomes your root package. That's what is referred here, right? So underneath, we are creating the sub packages. So controllers, DAO. DAO is data access object. We shortly call it as DAO, data access object. Okay. And we have model, we have repository, we have service. Okay. So all these are the packages that we have created. So underneath this, we can go ahead and create classes. So the very first thing is we need to create a class under the controller. So I'm going to create a new class. So right click on the package and then straight away you can create a class from there. Uh, so here we can give a name for the class as product controller because we are going to deal with sports products. So we can give a class name as product. Should create a class. Yeah. So product controller is the class name. Okay. Um, and the same way we have a service. We go ahead and create product service. First, I'll create all these uh, essential uh, classes, and then I'll brief you about what's going to happen. Because code-wise, I might not be in a position to write all the codes manually, but I'll try to explain you the code. Product DAO class and model is going to be product, and we have repository. And I'm going to create an interface here. Okay, make a note of it. I'm just creating an interface under the repository. Product repository. I guess in the Microsoft Teams, you will have the option to make it as a full screen. Okay, so just see if you have that option. Okay, so here you'll be having it. So full screen mode. Okay, so you can just use that. One more package is required. I'll just define it as entity. Product entity. So we have all the relevant set of classes being created, right? So we have product entity class, we have model class, which is product, we have product repository and product service and product DAO and product controller. Okay, so I already have the code as I said, right? So I'll just try to bring in that code quickly because we have to go to the Amazon Web Service and we need to deploy that as well, right? So in order to uh, see that end to end, I'll not be finding time to type the code entirely. Um, so let's go ahead and capture a product controller code. So here, typically what happens is probably I'll just try to do a little bit of workaround here. So we just go ahead and add the REST controller. I'm using an annotation here called REST controller to mark this class as a controller class where it will accept the REST calls, it will process it and respond it. So we can use that as a demarcation for this particular class. Now under the product controller, we need to have the endpoint methods. So we have the endpoint methods. So one endpoint method that I'm going to use is find all products. Okay. So here I'm just going to drop in that particular method, find all products. I'll explain you what's actually happening here. Uh, so if you see, we have find all products, which is an endpoint method. So I'm going to use, it's a get request that we are sending, so that we are going to use get mapping annotation surrounded with get mapping. And we can define some endpoint name. So let's say products. Okay. The endpoint name is products. So when a user sends a request with the products, this particular method gets executed. Now we need to look out for the product list of products. So what we are going to return is actually a list of product. So let's go ahead and have the return type, which is list of product here. And here we are in need of having a service. So this controller will call the service. So we have a service class, right? Product service. This need to be demarcated as per the Spring uh, configurations. We need to configure them as a service class. This is an annotation based configuration, right? Instead of using XML based or manually configuring it in the Java configuration class, we can make use of the annotation of at service, at rest controllers, at repository, at component, right? So all these annotations can be used appropriately. This product service, so it'll be, the flow will be like this. A user sends in a request, and the request will be handled by the controller, the one which we created, the product controller. The product controller, before the product controller, we actually have the dispatcher servlet. As per the Spring workflow, they have an inbuilt servlet, predefined servlet, which we call it as a dispatcher servlet. The request actually hits the dispatcher servlet. Dispatcher servlet, based on the URL mapping, it will identify the controller and the product controller class. The particular endpoint method will get executed. From that method, the call will go to this service. Okay. And from the service, we'll be going it to the DAO. Okay. And DAO will actually communicate with the database. Okay. So this is what is the flow is. So from the controller, we need to go to the service, and from the service, it has to go to the DAO, and from the DAO, it has to hit the database. So, but we are going to use something called Hibernate JPA here to communicate with the backend. So product service codes are required. It's nothing but we can just copy the same template of method, just drop it in here. Right. So now from here, we are going to use the DAO. Okay. So now listen carefully that we need to get the instance of the product service in the Spring framework. So we are going to use product service I'm not going to inject it via constructor. So I'm going to leave it to the default constructor, but I'm going to auto wire them. So auto wiring is one mechanism where we can ask the IOC container to inject an instance called product service to this product controller. So product controller is depending on product service. So the dependency is injected via auto wiring, and we are going to call this as find all products. So go to your product service, and in the product service, we need to auto wire for the product DAO. So you can use this product DAO here. And in product DAO again, we can have the similar method. So basically, we can perform some business logic in these methods, like service will be doing some business logic. Post, we get the data from the DAO. DAO is the only entity who will be eligible to communicate with the backend. Okay, so this interrupted exception is not required. So for time being, I'm just going to say null. Okay. Now, if you come to the product service, remove all the parameters. Now the errors are removed. So technically we don't require this response also here. Okay. So now we are ready with the controller, and the controller will communicate with the service. Service will tie up with the DAO, and the DAO is responsible for getting the data. So how do we connect to the database? That's something very important. Either we can connect to the external database like MySQL, or we can connect to the in-memory database. So in-memory database, what we are having here is H2 database. Okay, H2 database. So we have already included that. If we step into the pym.xml, you can see that the list of dependencies are here. Just go to the dependencies tab and you'll find all the dependencies. In this, the one important dependency that we have to see here is H2 database, right? We have H2 database, and this H2 database which we can use for communicating with the backend. Okay, so now the first thing is we need to go to the entity, the model class, because we are going to create an object out of the entities, the rows in the table. You will be having multiple rows, right? So you need to associate one object to the specific rows. So let's start from the model class. We have an empty model class here, the product. It's a plain old Java object, Ojo. Okay, plain old Java object. And you just step into this model class and then grab the code. So here we have this set of datas and a constructor and a getters and setters. The reason I'm just using this code is because I will not find time to type everything because it takes more than 2-3 hours of demonstrations. Okay, so I'll just explain you. We have all the private variables here: product ID, product name, category, descriptions, product price, and image. You can see the respective data types out here, and we have the respective controllers, and we also have the getters and setters. So we just align all the getters and setters properly. Okay, so we have getters and setters, and we have the constructors, and we have the member variables, the private member variables. If in case we can also generate the Tostring method. So let me generate Tostring. If in case we want to debug anything, we can just work around with that Tostring method. Okay, so Tostring method is up here. Just grab them and put it down. Order is not something we need to maintain, but to be a clean code, okay, code quality, right? We need to rely on code quality because when your application goes on to the production, code quality matters a lot. So from Java perspective, we can use multiple code quality tools. Okay, so we'll be having Sonar Cube. Sonar Cube is one of the beautiful tool for code quality check, whether the programmer have written the code with the standardized code quality or not. So if there is any redundant code, if there is any code smells, if there is any bugs, right? So all these can be identified with the help of this Sonar Cube tool. Okay. So probably if we get a chance, we'll just try to get that session also onboarded in the
database file.
yeah. I guess people have to go on mute.
దేంట్లోనూ 26 లోనా
Okay. Thanks. So now, so that's why we need to see that few things are in place. Okay. Fine. So now the model is ready. I'll tell you why we are using this model. Model class will be used by your controller. Controller service will all use model object, but DAO is the only person who will use the entity object. So that's why we have a separate entity class. This is referencing to your JPA. So let's go down to the entity and we'll grab some set of codes. Same set of code what we have done in the model, but slightly there is a difference. You'll have getters and setters. You'll have the member variables, but with all annotated with some specific entity-based annotations. So firstly, this class need to be marked as entity. So I'm going to use entity, and that's why we used JPA as a dependency in our pom.xml. Okay, if you see, when we were trying to create a project, at the time I imported this. I'm sorry, I added this dependency. You can see that here, starter data JPA, okay, which internally has a Hibernate dependency in it. So ORM based communication with the database, object relational mapping, Java persistence API will be used. So we don't need to write queries manually. Okay, maximum queries can be reduced from manually writing it, because the JPA will take care of those. So that's why we create an entity class which is referencing to the table, and if needed, you can just mark the table as well. So if there is a specific table name, so you can see there is a table out here. So mark the tables to products. So in the backend, there will be a table called products, and that products table will be mapped to this class called product entity. So rest is all the column names that we are defining. I guess that's it from this entity class. Now we can go to the repository, and you can demarcate them as at repository. And this is an interface. So we are going to extend one interface called JPA repository. Okay, and this JPA repository will prompt for your entity type. So that is a product entity. And what data type are we going to use there as a primary key? So in the product entity, if you notice, I've just defined some columns, and there's an @id annotation which is used. This will make sure that the column in the table, which is a product ID column, okay, that product ID column uh, will be a primary key, okay, and that primary key type is int. This will make that particular object unique. So with the help of primary key, we'll be making the object to be identified uniquely, right? So that's why we go for this @id and @column, I'm sorry, @id annotation, to make sure that this field will be mapped to the primary key column of the table. Okay, rest is all non-ID fields. Only one ID column that we'll be adding if it is a single primary key. Okay, if it's a composite primary key, then we'll be working in a different aspect. Okay, we have a different solution for that. Now let's keep that there is only one column to be a primary key in our table. Now going to the repository, this is an integer type. So in our repository interface, we need to provide the integer. ID type is going to be integer. That's all. So these are the two generic parameters that we need to provide while we are creating a repository. So what's the advantage of creating a JPA repository? This will have all the predefined methods to work with the database. Okay, you can save an object, you can delete an object, right? You can find for one particular object, you can find all objects from the database. So all these are going to be automated with the help of this JPA repository. So if you just get into that JPA repository, you'll find those methods. So save all, save and flush, find all by ID. Okay, then you have delete all in batch. So we have find all methods. Okay, and this also in turn calls another um, interface like paging and sorting repository, query by example executor. So these are interconnected in the repository hierarchy. Let's not get into more in detail. With this plain empty interface, are we able to achieve the database operations? Yes, of course, we can perform the database operations. I'll just do that as well shortly. So let's go to the product DAO. In the product DAO, now we have to access the repository in order to play around with the database. So at AutoWired, and the repository name is product repository, product repository. Okay, so the product repository is going to be injected, and we can make use of this product repository dot find all. Okay, so this find all will return. So you can notice that when how come this find all method comes? The find all method comes with the help of the repository class interface that we have created, and there is a JPA repository which is also there, which might help us to fetch the data. So it's an inbuilt method. So the return is actually product entity. Okay, so the return is actually product entity, but we are not supposed to return the product entity. We are supposed to return only the product, right? The model class alone should be played around. I mean, outside to the DAOs. Okay, we are not supposed to play around with the product entity. So we have a little bit of workaround here. Just go to the product DAO. So here, I'm just going to convert the product entity into list of product. So what is happening here is the same. The find all method will return a collection of entities. Okay. So you can see that we have this find all method which returns a collection of entity. Okay. And it's a product entity, the entity class object list of, because there are 10 rows or 15 rows, it will return all those records in an object style. So we don't need to manipulate them manually. Rather, it returns an object itself. So later we need to create a list of product and iterate this product entity. The product entity object value should be extracted and converted to a product object, because product is a model. As I said, outside to this DAO, we are supposed to work around with model alone, but not with the entity. Entity will be used only within the DAO. Why? Because when you get the entity object, you'll be able to do any manipulations on the entity object. When you do a delete, or when you try to do an update, immediately the entity objects will get updated, and it will update on the backend also. So we have to ensure that that particular part of changes should never happen. Okay, fine. So that's the reason that I'm trying to convert the product entities list of object to a product object. It's a list of objects. Okay, so then finally you can return the products. That's all. So I guess all relevant codes have been placed successfully. And this we can use it further to communicate with the backend. So who's going to be our backend? That we have to see. So right now we have just completed with the code, but we haven't created the database. So for database, we already have H2 database, right? So we can go ahead and make use of that H2 database. But first we need to configure them. So from the resources directory, we'll just create one file. So it's going to be called as application dot properties. Okay. So it's a property file that we are going to do a configurations as. Okay. I'm sorry, the spelling is wrong. Okay. So I already have the configuration as well in the earlier project. So we'll just take that. First, we talk about the application dot properties. So you can notice that we have some set of configurations which will help us to communicate with the backend. Okay, so data source username, that is database username, database password, what is the URL of your database, what is the schema of your database, which driver you're supposed to use, and whether you want to display the SQL that's going to be auto generated, and which dialect of query to be generated. Is that a MySQL database or what dialect is that? Whether you want to do a DDL, data definition language, okay, to be like create table or drop table, that can be added here. So update means if the table doesn't exist, it will go ahead and create the table. Okay, if the table already exists, then it will not create the table automatically. And the port this application is going to run is 8282. So default, if you don't give it, then it becomes 8080, right? But I want to keep it explicitly with 8282. Okay, so now let's get into application-dev. Here there is going to be another property settings, and that's for in-memory database. Okay, so one is for MySQL. Application.properties is the default property settings that will be picked up by Spring Boot to configure the database. But we have dev properties, development properties, where we have a different application name. We have the port again enabled. H2 console is activated. Then H2 database relevant URL, username, password, the driver, dialect, everything is kept in place. Okay, so these are some of the informations that we have to provide for connecting to the H2 database. Now we can also run through a script. So what is the problem with the POM? Okay, let's rebuild this. Okay, so the database is ready. We also have a script which need to be executed for sample database. So that is data.sql. We can take the script. This data.sql, the naming convention should be followed as the file name as data.sql. So you can see I've created the table, which is products, product ID, product name, product category columns, and some sample records to get inserted. So this script will be auto executed when the application is going to be booted. So we need to keep this file inside the resources directory. So I'm just copying this file and dropping it into the resources directory. So with this, that's it. Our application is created. Spring Boot application is created. Now we can go ahead and think of how to launch it in the AWS instance. Okay. So in order to work on this, so what I'm going to do is first let's test it out in the local. Okay, whether this application is working or not. So let's get into the project root folder. Let me take some water. So let me open a terminal. So this is a location where our project is, right? So I've just redirected to that particular location. Okay. So here you can see some set of files are there. Okay. I'm going to use the Maven command to build this particular project. So mvn clean package. Okay. So what happens is this clean command will help us to remove the target directory and create a new target directory and archive the artifact. So first, let's get into this. So you can see that there are no artifacts are available. Means we need to build this project to a jar archive, right? So only then we'll be able to execute that particular application. We can run it from this IDE itself, but still, I just wanted to show you through a Maven manual command. So it's nothing is there in the target directory. So let's step out from the root directory. You can provide mvn space clean package. This will take some time. Package the application and it will deliver with the target directory. I'm sorry, it will deliver the artifact inside the target directory. So the port that this particular application is going to run is on 8282. Seconds. As you can see, the build operation is happening. People who are new, probably these steps are too many steps that we are doing, but you can just understand at least something out of it, and you can understand that this is how the real-time application development works. Yeah, there is one more problem that we have because since we are using H2, I just want to exclude the testing operations. So I'm going to drop the test libraries dependencies from the POM. So remove them. When you remove them, you should also remove the test packages, test directories. So we are not going to do any JUnit test right now. So I'm dropping it so that the build can be successful. Now you can see that the build is ending up with an error. The reason that we are getting this error is we use an in-memory database, but we also have MySQL configured. So we need to refer that which application properties that it has to pick for testing, whether the MySQL configuration or H2 configuration. So in order to avoid that confusion at present, I'm just eliminating the testing features. So let's go ahead and define again mvn clean package. So people used to do mvn clean install, okay, mvn deploy, and mvn clean package. There are different ways we can work on it, but those are life cycles of Maven. Package, installation, that is install, and deploy, verify, compile is all life cycles of Maven, Maven build tool. So I'm using package to just create a jar out of it. That's all. So right now let's step into the target. And there you can see now there is an availability of jar file. So let's go ahead and execute this jar file. So in order to execute, Java space -jar, and you can use -d. This is for providing which application properties it has to pick, whether Dev properties or this one. Okay, whether the MySQL configurations. By default, it will pick the application.properties. This MySQL configuration, but I want this Dev to be picked up. So that I need to mention here. Spring.profiles.active equals Dev, and then you can run the jar file. So the command is java space -jar to run the jar file, and you need to provide the environment variable informations using -d option, giving the key as spring.profiles.active, which profile to be activated, Dev profile, so that at the runtime it will go and pick the Dev profile and make sure it is connected to the H2 database. So let's see if this is getting executed successfully. Okay, there is a dependency error. So let's go ahead and see what's the problem is. The problem is in the DAO, we haven't demarcated the DAO as at component. Otherwise, we cannot inject the instance for this product DAO, right? So that's the problem. So let's think once again. DAO entity is all marked, controller is marked, service is also marked. So we have to go back and rebuild and repackage the jar file so that the changes what you made in the code will get reflected in the new jar file. Okay, now the build is successful. Let's step into the target and we can recall the command of that java-jar, spring profiles, and the jar file. Okay, I guess the application is started now. You can see that. Started the application and it is running in the 8282 port, and embedded Tomcat server is picked up and is using the H2 in-memory database. Okay, so let's go to our browser, localhost :8282. Do you want to see the H2 dashboard? You can use /h2-console, which will launch you the console dashboard H2. So in order to connect to that, so this is the URL, password is password. How the password is identified? Because if you see the Dev properties, you notice that the password is given as password, and this is the URL, sports store schema. That's what is recognized here, and you can connect it. So when you connect, you can see the products table is coming. How come this product table came? Because the query got executed. Which query? Automatically the data.sql query, okay, got executed. It created the table and it inserted the records as well. So you can see that the products table is here. So select star from products. So you can see all the records are available here. So we want to get all the product details. In order to get all the product details is where we have done all these steps. The DAO will help us in getting all the product details by using the find all method of the repository. And we are converting the product entity objects to a product object. And we are returning back to the service. And the service is in turn returning it back to your controller, because the controller is the one who's calling the service. Okay, so let's go to the browser. Localhost colon 8282. What is the endpoint name? In the controller, we have given the endpoint name as products. So if you just say products, you'll be able to fetch the data. See, everything is responded in the JSON format. So how many records we have there in the backend? 9 records. Can you see? There's 9 records we have pulled here. I didn't even use single select query statement, but still I'm able to achieve this because we are using JPA here, Java Persistence API with Spring Data JPA with Hibernate integration. So these are the list of all products which is taken from the backend. Now, locally it is running fine, but this we need to take it up to the Ec2 instance, right? So how we can achieve that, how we can take it up to that Ec2 instance. So I guess we still have another 15 more minutes alone. Anyways, I'll try to see how far that I can complete. But if in case you have any questions on this, please do let me know. If you're completely new to Spring, then it will be quite difficult to follow up whatever I've done so far. But if you're already having some basics of Spring, then sure, this can be a little bit of knowledge that you would have got out of it. Spring Boot. So what is the advantage of Spring Boot is quickly create your application much faster. Okay, now this is a web application running with an embedded Tomcat server. So I'll just pause here. If in case you have any questions, please do let me know.
For controller, why we use the REST controller instead of controller?
Come again, sorry.
For a controller, I annotate it to the REST controller. Why not we choose the controller annotation?
That's a good question. So if we are not using the REST controller here, then you have to use an added annotation called @response body. So this can be eliminated. Why we have to use @response body is because we have to ensure that the response that's going out from this controller will be appended in the response body. It has to be appended in the response body, right? So your response goes to the user, right? You'll be having something called response body. So in the response body, the data should be appended. If you don't give a response body, then what will happen is this will look out for a view channel. Okay, instead of appending it, it will go and search for some view page which need to be displayed. So it's added to that. We need to give response body annotation. But the advantage of REST is what? REST is not going to return any view page like HTML or something like that. REST means it will only respond it in the JSON. So we can use, instead of using controller, we can go for REST controller so that every time we don't need to use a response body additionally. Because response body is going to be inbuilt inside the REST controller itself. I'll just show you now. If you hover the cursor, you can see the response body is already there as part of the REST controller, right? So we don't need to provide the response body here anymore. So that's a reason. So we just want to return only the REST response, the JSON, but we don't want to return any HTML page to the user. We don't want to return any JSP pages to the user, right? So that's where it's a REST based application. Now you can see the Spring Boot is helping us in creating a REST based application. Probably your front end can be your Angular, right? So Angular application can contact this backend, and Angular will get the JSON, and Angular will display those data in their view content. So what your backend application henceforth is going to do is only exchange your JSON data. From the front end, you will send the data in JSON format, and from the application, it will go back as a JSON only. So the communication mode between the client and the backend, the front end and the backend, is going to be through JSON. Backend means talking about the backend application, not the database. Database is different. That's a relational database where the backend application will communicate with the relational database. Are you getting it?
Yeah, got your point.
Yeah, thanks. Do anyone have any other question?
Sir, difference between entity object and model object.
Difference between entity object and model object is, as you can see, entity object is explicitly highlighted to be an entity who's eligible for JPA manipulations, the ORM. Okay, it's an entity class. So this particular class can be used by your Hibernate. Internally, the Spring JPA will use it. Okay, only the class which is demarcated as entity, those classes can be bound for your uh, ORM implementation, object relationship management, right? So that's why we go for table mapping. So the tables is going to be mapped to this entity, but model is just a plain old Java object. That object cannot be persisted into the database, but product entity objects will be persisted into the database. Why? Because it's an entity object. All entity objects can be, see, when you create one object, it can be tied up to the row automatically, right? How an object can be tied up to a row when it is coming to ORM? Only when the object is an entity object. So for that, the class should be marked as entity class. It looks more like model only, but we additionally use all the entity related annotations. But if you look at the model, model is not non-entity class. Okay, model is a non-entity class. No entity, no IDN. Why we use this? We use this for I mean, using it as an object within the application. So this model object can be integrated with entity object. But entity object who will use only the DAO. But how about your controller, your service? Those people should not use your entity. They are supposed to use only the model object. Because if these people are doing some changes in the model object, that will never impact your backend. But when you make a direct change in the entity objects, then it will update in the backend automatically. You're getting it. So you should never allow the other entities other components should use the entity object other than the DAO. So in order to encapsulate that, we bring in the model object. Model is a plain old Java object. Is this clear?
Yeah, yes, sir, got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Do anyone have any other question?
Company projects company
Okay. So that's what it is. If anyone having any questions, please do let me know. No questions? Okay. So the next step is we need to take this application into the EC2 instance that is in the AWS thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a Bitbucket. So I have my Bitbucket Git. We are going to use the Git tool. So we already have some sports repo here. I'm going to create a new repo. It is called as sports store. We'll keep the name as sports store. I'm going to create a new repository. Okay. Sports-store is a repository name. You know Git, right? We used to manage the source code management tool. Okay. Different versions of source code can be managed with the help of Git, and typically GitHub is one example of tool which uses Git. But I'm using Bitbucket instead of GitHub. Now I'm using Bitbucket. I have my own free version of account, and I'm using Bitbucket, and GitHub is all going to be more similar, but Bitbucket is more of commercial. But still we have free access with limited accessibility. Okay. So default branch, let's say master, and that's all. Let's create a repository. So we got this. We can click on clone. From this repository, you can see the Git clone link is there. You can just copy that. Let's step into the terminal. So let's stop this. So let's step back. So we have the source pom.xmls. All files are here. Only the specific files will get into um, the bit bucket. So we have to connect to it. So first thing is git. So we have git remote. So git remote add origin. So avoid this clone. So we have connected to this repository, the sports store repository. So with this git init, git status. So these are all some of the files that need to be included. So I just wanted to include git add dot. So these are all the files that need to be committed. Okay. So git commit -m first commit. Git push. Mm, Okay, that is an error. And either specify the URL. Okay. Okay, I just that is a conflict with the master branch. So let me check which branch I'm in. So I'm inside the master. Uh, okay, I'll do one thing right now. Okay, I typically I'm just trying to push this code into this sports store repo. Okay, but technically speaking, I already have pushed the code earlier as well. So that's what this repository talks about. So sports store repo. And here under the master branch, I'm facing currently a conflict. So it will take some time to resolve that conflict. So right now the source code is already there. Okay. This is same like what the source code that we have created right now. Okay. So that's what is there in this package as well. So we can make use of this for time being. Okay. So we'll get back to this. Before that, let's get into the AWS to launch an EC2 instance and then deploy this application there. So I'm trying to sign into the console of my AWS, which will prompt for the user credentials. So right now I'm going to log in as root user, skill.subrepository.com and give next. Let's provide a password. I'll be asked for a MFA code. So I'm going to provide my MFA code, which is going to be available on my Authenticator app in my mobile. So it's 978868. So with this, we are going to launch the EC2 instance. Okay, EC2 instance is a Linux virtual instance that we are going to launch from the AWS. So here we have the EC2 service of the AWS. Right now I've logged in into my account, specifying to a specific region of Northern Virginia. That is the default region that will be highlighted. So people who are already working with AWS might be aware of this. This is a default region where I'm going to launch my EC2 instance. Already I have one instance which is up and running. Let's go to the instances. My network is a little slow, I guess. So it is checking for the availability of instances. Okay, I already have one instance referring to this Spring Boot application, which is up and running. Okay, so what I'm going to do right now is let's go ahead and stop this. I'll take another 10 more minutes. Let me see. So this is getting stopped. So I'm going to launch a new instance. Give a name as some instance name that you can give. So Spring Boot. And the OS that we have to choose here is the AWS Amazon Linux free tier version I'm using. And the instance type is also going to be under the free tier, which is T2 micro. OK, and we have to create a new key pair to access this EC2 instance. So I'm going to create a new key pair, giving a name as Spring Boot capsule. Create a key pair. With this key pair only you can it will create a public and private key. Public key will be kept by the EC2 instance server. Private key will be downloaded. You can see it got downloaded here. OK, this we need to hand it over to the EC2 instance while we are connecting to the instance, and that will help us to authenticate. I'm giving everyone can access this server right now. It's a 8 GB of default RAM. Hard disk that I'm using, and 1 GB of RAM. It's a free tier mode, so we can use it. It's 750 hours of time limit that we have to make use of the EC2 instances. So we can, without worry, we can go ahead and launch the instance. So this is again a virtual machine, but this will have a DNS so that everyone can access the application from anywhere in the world. Let's go to the instances. Just refresh and see if that instance is picked up to get launched. Yes, of course. Here it is, the Spring Boot. Just click on the Spring Boot. You will note down. You will be noting down the public IP, private IP is all there. The DNS public DNS name is there. So this we can use it. So the first thing is let's go ahead and capture this EC2 instance. Let's look out for this PEM file. It's a private key that we have, right? So let's copy this and put it somewhere in, let's say, my users capsule session. So EC2 instance. I already have one PEM file, but I newly created one right now, right? Uh, Spring Boot capsule, right? I'm unable to take that. Finder. Something odd is happening in my system. Okay, so I'll do one thing. I'll just go for this. Stuck. Just a second. Okay. So we have to locate to the place where we have the PEM file. So that's what I'm trying to do right now. So we have the PEM file. So SSH, I'm going to use the SSH tool to connect to the EC2 instance. Okay. So -I, and then you can give the PEM file name. Okay. SSH-I spring boot -capsule.pem. And we have to provide the DNS name, this one. But while we are providing this DNS name, we have to use the username of this instance. The username of this instance will be EC2-user @. Okay, so that's the username and the server. Okay, so with this we are trying to connect. Say yes. Okay, to open, right? So this is ls-lrt. If you look at the, actually there are multiple files are there. Spring boot capsule, if you see, it is having write privilege. Okay, so this need to be changed. You should not have write privilege while you're transferring this PEM data to the network. So change mode to 400 for Spring Boot capsule PEM. So with that, if I say -lrt, you'll notice that it is only holding the read permission. I've changed the permission as well. So we'll go ahead and try to SSH to the EC2 instance again. Cool. We are connected to the EC2. So how we can confirm that we have connected to the EC2 is by looking at this username. Okay, EC2-user is the user that we have connected to the EC2 instance. Okay, so from here we can do everything is going to be from the scratch. Okay, because there are multiple things that we have to do here. First, let's get into the root directory. So for that, I'm using sudo switch user -, which will help us to go back to the root user so that we will have full privilege. EC2 user is a normal user, but root is a admin privilege, right? So here we don't have any directory. So I'm going to create make directory downloads. Sorry. Okay. So now we can go ahead and mkdir downloads. cd downloads, and we have to get few softwares downloaded. Okay, so I'll just do that. First one is we need to get the Java software installed because it's a new Linux instance, right? So we need to have the Java software. Sorry for taking more time because it took some time to complete the code itself, right? So JDK 14, open JDK 14 or open JDK 18 downloads. So let's get into this open JDK download. You have the Linux version, right click on the tar and copy the link. And you have a wget command to get your software downloaded. The same way we have to get the Maven software, Maven downloads. Or the Maven. Yes, people can go on mute. Okay, so get the Maven software downloaded, binary file of archive, copy the link address. So now you can see that the OpenJDK is downloaded in our machine. So I'm using a command called wget. Okay, wget is Amazon Linux versions package that is already available inbuilt. Now you can download your Maven. So you can notice that you have the Maven downloaded and OpenJDK downloaded. This need to be extracted. So I'm going to use the tar command xvf to extract your Apache Maven. Extract them. Okay, it got extracted. And now you see that there is Apache folder is there. And the same way we need to extract xvf with OpenJDK. Okay, now this JDK is getting extracted. So you can see both the files are there. Now we need to move this to a specific folder. Okay, Apache should be moved to opt directory. Okay, so opt directory. So inside the opt directory will be loading all the softwares in the Linux. Okay, opt is the specific directory where we place all the softwares. So move JDK to opt directory. So now there are no files available here. Let's get into the opt directory. And there you will see both the files are, both the softwares are existing. Okay, so now what we have to do is we need to copy this and we have to set a path. Okay, that is two more steps we have. So set Java path in Linux. So we'll just copy the steps. So for this, what we have to do is we have to go to vi dot bash underscore profile. So that will be there available in this root -a to show all the hidden files. Come back to this home ls-a. You can see there's a bash profile in the root directory. So you need to go for vi dot bash profile to be edited. Okay, so before that, let's copy this export commands. And yeah, we will go to this. And here you can drop in those commands. Okay. So technically, this export is not required. This is not required. So in the Java home, we need to refer the path. Okay, so which is the path? that is opt /opt/ the Java thing, right? So that let's copy it. ls/opt. So copy the name of this JDK-18. So this will be referred to the bin directory of the Java home. Okay. So with this, write and quit, and you can notice that Java version, if we need to source out this first, because it's like environment variable settings, right? That is how we do it in Linux. Unexpected end of file. Okay. Double quotes was not closed, opened properly. So Java space -version. Okay, Java is installed. That's it. Now let's go ahead and set the path for Maven alone. That is one more thing. Maven path settings. So technically you'll be having m2_home. So ls/opt. Copy this name. Go to vi.bash profile. Initially, it will be intimidating to work on all these workflow, but as you do it multiple times, you'll get used to it. Okay, so nowadays we are working towards the cloud-based deployments, right? So it's good to have cloud knowledge along with your development. So /opt/paste it, and coming down $$ m2 m2_home/bin. Okay, that's it. Write and quit. So again, source out, because we need to refresh the environment variables settings in the profile. mvn-version. Okay, Maven is also installed. That's it. Now let's get into, now we'll create one directory called mkdir source code. Okay, so let's step into source code. We don't have the source code. We need to bring it from the bit bucket, right? So we need to copy this, but technically we don't have the Git tool here. So we're going to install the Git by using yum command. M is a package manager, and you can install it. So yum install Git. Cool, it's downloading. Yes, install it. These are all happening in the AWS EC2 instance. AWS bandwidth is used, not my network, my internet bandwidth. I'm using AWS bandwidth. I have 100 GB of free per month, right? We can make use of that effectively. So now Git is there. So you can check if Git version is available. Yes. Now you can try to clone the repository. But before cloning it, Git clone the branch which we need to mention. So we can mention -b master. So you can see 5.7 MB of thing is downloaded. So sports repo, okay, got downloaded in the source code. So step into the sports repo, and inside that you'll be finding the source folder. What we have to do, we need to use the same command of mvn clean package. This will help us in creating a artifact, the jar file in the target directory. After completing this step, you can see that it is downloading all the jar files dependencies when you do the Maven, because target folders will not get committed to your Bitbucket. Okay, only the source codes will get committed. Build is successful. Now, if you just list out, you will find a target directory. So move to the target directory and you will find the jar file. What does that we need to do here from here is java space -jar -d spring dot profiles dot active equals Dave. The same command what we did in the local is what I'm trying to do it on the EC2 instance right now. Okay, Dave and the sports store jar file, which you can look out for. So this will help us in triggering the in-memory H2 database, and it will load all the scripts and your application will be up and running. It's up and running. It's running in the 8282 port. But the problem is, in order to access this application, okay, we need to get the DNS name. Go to this DNS name and you can look out for the port called 8282. It will not permit you to access the 8282 because 8282 port is not open. So one settings that we have to do is in the EC2 instance security settings, we have to enable the port by getting into the security group. So here we can open the port. Okay, if you see still it is keep on running, it is unable to access it. So in the security group, we can add the port. Right now it is only eligible to access the SSH port. But right now I'm giving a custom TCP port, which is 8282. Open it. Who can access? Anyone can access. No constraints. Okay, so save the rule so that this port is now open for access. Now if you go and give a request, it's accessible, but we are not hitting to the specific application, right? So we need to access what? Products. The same 9 records is now accessible, but this is accessible globally. So if you want to see this, see if you can get my message. If you are able to access my chat, just confirm. I'm just sharing this link right away. See if you can access my link. Are you able to access my link? Hello.
Yes, sir. Checking. Yeah, yes, sir.
Okay.
Sure.
Fine, thanks. Yeah. And see if you are able to get this data on your browser.
Yeah, yeah. Browser 9 records are displayed.
Good. So one more thing that you can do is, since it's my earlier application, you can also search for a specific product ID. You can remove the products. Yes, you can remove. Instead of that, the endpoint name is product / search for 7th record and see if you are able to pull the 7th record or 6th record or 8th record.
Sir, for me, keep on loading. Unable to fetch the data.
Okay. It should work because for me it's working. Probably network. You should look out for that. You're using the exact link, right?
Yeah, I sir copied from chat and directly hit into the address bar of the browser.
Okay. Okay, someone have posted the screenshot. Good. So is the product 7 or 6 is working? Someone have tried? Hello, am I audible? Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so yeah, are you able to access now?
No, sir, still keep on loading, unable to fetch the data.
Is it?
For me, yeah.
Okay. Others are able to access, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
yes,
sir.
sir. I can.
Yes, yes.
Okay, good. Fine. So probably you can share your screen if possible, Jayanti. Are you able to share your screen? So this is how we play around with the application deployment in AWS. Okay, so if you have any questions, please do let me know. I guess a few people have
Sir,
dropped
able
out.
to see my screen?
Yeah,
Manimohan
I'm
here.
able to see your screen. Yes.
Sir.
You have problem in network.
Yeah, in network. I guess your you are which network you are using? Corporate network or
No, sir, Geo Fiber.
okay.
Personal only.
Okay. Mm, it should work. Or else you can try this copying it into your mobile and then you can try. This machine is your personal laptop
Yeah.
or is this
My
corporate
personal one, sir. My
personal?
personal, I'm not using my corporate. Yeah.
Okay.
Let me try with my mobile
You
networks.
can do one thing. You can clear your cache. Okay, the
Okay.
browser cache you can clear.
Okay.
Okay, history is there, right? You know history in Chrome. You
Yeah.
have the history. Yeah, you clear the
Nice.
history once and then you try. It should
Yeah,
work.
sure. Yeah, sure. Let me
Okay,
try and.
sure. Yeah. Do anyone have any other question? My screen is visible. Any questions you have, please do let me know so that we can wind up. Actually, I have taken additional 30 more minutes. Any basic questions? If you have, please do let me know. So this is just an end-to-end
For
setup that I'm trying to. Yes, please, Satyan.
for keep on practicing Spring Boot for what website I have to refer.
To learn Spring Boot.
Yeah, to learn Spring Boot, practicing the Spring Boot.
Practicing Spring Boot is like you technically need to have your tools in your machine. So ID you can have, but probably I can suggest few links. You can connect up with me. Okay.
Okay.
I will try to suggest you with some set of links where or the materials which can help you to practice on it. I'll try to share that because technically you should have only the ID in your place, so the STS ID, and you can practice the thing. But you need some learning curve, then probably I can help you out on some of the references. Yeah. Do anyone have any other question?
Sir,
Okay.
we are not using AWS in our
Yeah.
projects.
Hello. Any
Hello,
question?
sir. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible. Yes.
So mostly we are using PCF, sir, Pivotal Cloud Foundry. So
Hmm.
is it the same cloud platform as
No,
the
Pivotal Cloud
process?
Foundry, it will be different. PCF will be the entire deployment process will be different there. Because you will not be having the virtual cloud there. Okay. So I mean, you will not have the virtual machines there. Actually, it's completely a platform as a service there. Okay, but AWS is end to end. It's a complete cloud. So majority of the applications are nowadays going into Spring. I mean, the Spring Boots are going into AWS or Azure. But yes, of course, PCFs are also in place. But PCF way of workaround is entirely different. But still, you can deploy your Spring Boot applications there. Probably I'll just try to share some references. You can just follow up with that.
So for learning AWS, which one we have to follow for AWS full package?
For
Want to learn?
AWS, yeah, learning is we have different, courses like Udemy is having some courses. I personally use Adrian Cantrell. He's one of the best coach for AWS. So he has all stacks in it, but his cost is little higher. So it's in dollars. He's an Australian guy, and he's one of the best of the best. I mean, the coach I would say recommending for AWS learning. Okay, because I personally upgraded to AWS with the help of his course only. It's online. It's lifetime accessibility, one-time payment, lifetime accessibility. I'll share those resources. You can just connect up with me.
Okay. How much we have to pay for that course, sir?
That's what it's little costlier actually. I remember when I was connecting for solutions architect, I was paying almost 3,500. Okay.
Okay.
And he will give the complete access for the solutions architect. You can also clear the exam with his course. So you'll be having more hours of training sessions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it will be
Maybe
around 3,000 to 3,500. That's it. But it's a worth a penny to pay for his courses.
can you please share those details?
Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, you can WhatsApp me. I'll just share it. Sure.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Do anyone have any further question? So probably next time we'll come up with another interesting, probably exclusively on AWS, or we will discuss more and also on the Spring Boot side. But I have to figure out for the time, so that's a problem. So once the time is there, then sure I'll connect up with you people.
Sure. Sir, we need a microservices, sir.
Okay.
They're asking microservices for me.
Yeah. I knew that. So we'll also try to come up with that session. Sure, I'll do that.
Sure. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Yeah. So thank you so much for your time and have a great weekend. Probably we'll connect up in the
Thank-
next session. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
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 So thank you, sir. Thank you
Thank
so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, sir.